Hello everyone, my name is Olena Kleiner. I'm CEO and co-founder of SalesDep.ai, and here is my podcast about great people I meet during my life. And here with us today, Patric Palm, the person who inspires me a lot because he's a huge entrepreneur and the owner of investment fund and a great companies. And today we met in Bali to talk about business and to go into details how successful businesses are built. First of all, Patrick, thank you for coming here and finding time to record this interview while you're having your holidays. And
not so much holiday. I'm actually doing mostly remote work from here.
Okay.
But schedule has been pretty crazy. It's supposed to be relaxing in Bali, right? But not really.
As always, for entrepreneurs, So tell us, please, let's start from the beginning. Tell us a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey, how it started, which companies have you built. Just give us the general overview of what you have now in your life.
Well, that very often when I listen to interviews with entrepreneurs, the story very often starts with that, I started my first business when I was, 12 and 6 years old.
Yeah.
And, my parents did this and so forth. And I have, nothing of that. I come from Sweden, the northern part of Sweden, and none of my parents were entrepreneurs. They were both, working in government.
Mm-hmm.
So, building things, making money, those kind of things were absolutely not in my upbringing, at all.
Okay, how did you end up being an entrepreneur then?
I mean, the closest I can get, I don't know if you have, done any research on your, going back in time. In Sweden, it's quite easy to do it because the church books are pretty good. Mm-hmm. So I have been able to trace back to the 1600s. My family, both on my mother and my father's side.
Mm-hmm.
So the closest I get is on my mother's side. They were farmers. And running a farm is, that's a business, right?
Not easy one.
Yeah, not an easy one. And all the way up until on my grandparents on my mother's side, there was a farm. So when I grew up, I spent my summers on the farm.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the closest I can trace to something in my childhood
mm-hmm.
that had a bearing on this. On my father's side, going back, they're soldiers to some extent. So there's a bit of course, execution, getting stuff done is something that comes naturally in the military. So I have a little bit of that. But yeah, growing up, there was nothing like that. And I mean, maybe we can get into this, later. But I had this chance recently through my, small investment company to engage in the movie industry,
mm-hmm.
and to be a financier and an executive producer of two movie projects
Wow.
not so long ago. Actually, they're doing fantastic now. I need to fly back to Sweden here now because we've been getting a lot of awards, and one of these movies, it was nominated to 3 of the Swedish Oscars.
Wow!
So next Monday, I need to be in Stockholm for that and
to receive the award.
No, we were nominated. To be honest,
Okay.
I don't think we're gonna win because the main competition in our categories is a movie called Eagles of the Republic, that's tough competition.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one we just made, the other movie is about the conflict in Gaza, but it's very much from the perspective of two 12-year-old children.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a hopeful movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's about surfing and how the surfing brings them together. Anyways, the reason I bring this up, doing this, being able to engage in a bit of a childhood dream working with movies is that I did remember that I think I was 12 or so when my mother put me in film school.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually learned how to the photo, the editing, directing, some of those things when I was very young. And me and some friends, we recorded like a ton of VHS,
mm-hmm.
camera. We made our own movies. For some reason, it was mostly action and horror. We like that.
Horror on the farm.
Yeah. So we did that, and I think that led to maybe one of my first entrepreneurial things was that when I was in high school, I started a film society because
mm-hmm.
I was very interested in the kind of movies that maybe wasn't in the cinemas,
mm-hmm.
But they were really good. So we basically did screenings of very, very good, interesting movies, and our audience were the people in the high school. And this is actually when I did one of my first really big leadership mistakes. Because I started this together with 2 other people. And I really liked my father, and I learned a lot from him, not entrepreneurship, but other things. But he's been giving me two advice in my life that has been really big mistakes. One was to study German. I had absolutely no need for it. I really wish I would have studied Spanish or French or something instead. And the other advice he gave me that was very bad. Sorry, Dad, if you're listening. Is that he said, you shouldn't be the president or the chair because there's so much responsibility. You should be the deputy one, because then you're in the center of everything, but you're like one step, on the side, So that's exactly what I did, and we put another person as the president of this organization. But that was such a big mistake because I was the natural leader of this. I was one of the founders. I was the one typically presenting. I was basically the evangelist of what we were doing. So the whole situation just became super awkward. That there was one person who was like formally the boss, but I was the natural leader of it. Fortunately, I realized that. So after a year, we reversed that, and we just got into. I switched place with her, so she became the deputy, and I became the president. And order was restored. But that was one of my first leadership mistakes that I learned from, and maybe that was also potentially my first entrepreneurial venture. And then what happened was that. When you're in high school, and I guess for some people even earlier, you think a lot about, what am going to do when I grow up. And but I didn't, because I really liked playing with Lego when I was a kid. So I was asking my mother when I was very young, like, hey Mom, who plays with Lego when they're big? And she's like, well, it's the engineer. So it's like, okay, cool, I'm going to be an engineer. That's it. I made a decision like, a second. So when I was in high school, what I did, because again, the entrepreneurial path was I haven't even considered it. I didn't even realize that was something. So I was calling the heads of HR at some of the big, industrial companies in Sweden, like the Ericsson, the ABB, those kind of companies. Said, hey, I'm Patrick. I'm in high school, and I would like to come and work for you after university. Yeah, I didn't say that, but basically that's what I intended. And I was like, so what shall I study if I want to come work for you? And they all said, okay, you should go to the Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm, study, like electrical engineering, like a Master of Science in that, and then you should come work for us. I was like, okay, cool. So check on that too.
Okay, what was your age when you called them?
So I must have been like 13 or 14.
Wow,
yeah, so
that's quite early.
No, wait a second. No, I'm wrong. I would say 16. I think I was 16, yeah.
Quite conscious for this age, I would say.
But that led to then, another good learning where I was, very wrong about something. So what happened then was that I did do military service, and not so much because I really wanted to do it or anything, but I was raised relatively traditionally. So if you're going to be a man, you need to be baptized, you need to do confirmation, and you need to do military service. It was just in my family that that's what you do, and I had a plan. So my plan was that I really liked photo, so I did a lot of photography, and I, like old school. I spent time in the dark room, experimenting with the fluids and all that, and, So I did. I liked people and stars, so basically very close and very far away.
Okay, you mean stars as a people or real stars?
No, stars as in stars.
Okay, okay.
And that those types of photography are crazy different.
Exactly.
Technically and everything. A star photography is very technical, and people, it's more about there's other things that comes into that. So anyways, so my master plan here was that there must be some kind of photo ops in the military, and maybe I can be some kind of squad leader of some photo op thing. I was thinking like spy planes and stuff. It's not really how it works, but that's what the kid in me thought. And so my plan was that I expected, since I'd studied like a high school program in technology, and I knew I was going to study at the Royal Institute of Technology, Electrical Engineering. So I thought they're going to say, okay, you're going to be engineering troops. And then I was going to counter with, well, what about photo ops? So that was my plan. So I do all the tests, and I get to, the officer who's going to tell you, what to do. And he says something totally different. He says, no, I think you should go to an air base and become platoon leader of a platoon of Air Force Light Infantry, which is totally different from what I thought. I had scored very good on kind of logic and psychology tests, which I expected, but I had scored a little bit better on the physical stuff than I thought. So they thought I should do something which was more kind of like combat. So I did pursue I did go forward with my plan. I said, well, what about photo ops? And he's like, he looked like tired, like, and he was like, okay, we do have that. You can become a squad leader of this photo ops that we have. But I think it would be a big waste of talent, because if you become the platoon leader instead, you will have much more leadership responsibility. You will have 3 squads, there's the logistics. It's going to be much, much better for you. And this is the Air Force, so you only need to do 1 year. There was some kind of rule that it was only 1 year in the Air Force. And he said the equivalent, if you would do something in the army, would be longer. So it's only going to be like 1 year out of your schedule, so to say. So he's like, this is one of the best things that you can be offered, and you're lucky because you're early in the year. And then I made one of the best decisions of my life, that I said yes. I said, okay, let's do that. And then I remember I was asking the officer, I was like, because this was quite far up in the north, and I was asking like, I have a little bit sensitive feet. I'm gonna like freeze my feet. And he was like looking at me like, that's going to be the least of your problems.
What are going to be the biggest problems?
No, I mean, it's tough, right? I mean, nothing compared to, real things going on in the world right now.
Yeah.
But anyways, I mean, this is a long time ago when, the world and Europe in particular, we thought that, the time of wars were over. It's like, it's going to be any more of that stuff, The armed forces in Sweden, they were basically just taking it down and down and down every year. It was not any kind of line of work that anyone saw really much future in. Today is very different in Sweden, and maybe my path would have been very different if this happened today.
Okay, so you shared about your first project as a child, and then maybe like a young man. And how did you end up with doing some entrepreneurial thing? I mean, some first company.
So what happened then was that me and my girlfriend at the time, she had a bit of a similar story. So we were like, okay, let's just skip this. Let's just go somewhere. We had no money. I'm not born with, with any financial resources. So, but we had a little bit of savings. And I was calling up an old friend from high school that then worked as a travel photographer and journalist. And we said, okay. Her name is Linda. Linda, if you're listening, thanks to you here. So we're like, okay, so this is our budget, which was very little. Where can we go for half a year that we can afford, And she's like, okay, we basically triangulated that India was the place. So this is how I ended up backpacking in India for half a year, and how I discovered a lot of things around. I had a little bit of a taste of spirituality. First time I got in contact with Tantra from a very, let's say, philosophical point of view. Yoga, of course.
What was your age at this time? Just
now
I will stop you.
Now I'm 21.
21,
yeah.
Okay. You're in India. And
Yeah. So then I come back. This is how I ended up instead in Uppsala. And Uppsala is just north of Stockholm, and it's a university city. So very similar to, like Cambridge or Oxford in the UK. And I picked it because I wanted to study something different. I still wanted to do something that was highly ambitious. So the business administration program is very hard to get into. So I still had that. I wanted to do something ambitious that would be good career-wise, but I wanted to kind of like not do the engineering thing for a while. But the real drive was that I wanted to study social psychology, because I got really a taste for social psychology in the military, because that was a big part of my leadership training when I went to base commander school. I studied that, but now I was in kind of like hyperdrive with my drive, so I did like so many other projects. And then there were this is my first true taste of entrepreneurship, because there were some alumni that today were angel investors and management consultants, and they had started a consulting company that today we probably call like an accelerator or incubator, But then it was simply just a consulting company, and our business was to help basically spin-outs from the university world. It was typically PhD students that had some patent, and they wanted to build a company. And all of them, they thought that, oh, we just need to have some sales, you know?
Of course.
And it's like, no, you've done 10% of the work. So I was helping them with, you know, fundraising, you know, getting the right kind of partners involved so they could actually, you know, take this to a real company. So I was involved. So I started as a product manager there, but then I did so many deals that I had to hire a lot of people. So then I hired, so we were like 12 people quite soon. And then I said, this company needs a CEO. You know, and I have a suggestion, you know, me. and the board was like, well, aren't you like studying full time? I was like, you know, it's not that hard, you know, I can do both. So, you know, I'm not a big fan of the whole like, you know, 996 movement right now. We can talk more about that. But I have done it. I've been in that drive myself with, you know, ridiculous 100-hour weeks because I did full-time CEO work with that company, and I also started full-time at the same time. And I did succeed with it. And I did actually turn this company into profitable companies. We actually made a profit. I had helped 20 companies to get started, and we also had a different business arm, which was basically an events management. So I was involved in doing about 120 events over a 2.5-year period.
Wow.
Both quite big ones and also small ones like just roundtables. And what I realized from this, after, you know, helping 20 you know, entrepreneurial teams, was that I'm on the wrong side of the fence. I mean, I should be one of them. You know, I finally realized that.
Wow. That was a strong insight.
Yeah, we had some unsuccessful pitches. I was kind of pitching to everyone that I could get a meeting with, and there was a lot of, I remember, you know, like insurance companies and banks and things. So like, yeah, this is really cool, and it's just, I was not able to close any deals. And then it was also tough with game developers because there's something weird about Sweden, which is that Swedes don't like to buy from other Swedes. It's kind of like, well, there must be some American company doing this better. It's like
I didn't know.
Yeah, it's a weird cultural thing in Sweden, and especially since my two fellow founders also came from one of the kind of major game developers in Sweden. It was, I guess, some competition too. It's like, oh, we're not going to buy from those guys. So Sweden was a very tough market for us. So the first successful sales project I did was AAA developing independent, meaning not publisher-owned, game studios in the mid UK.
Interesting. How did it happen?
Well, I did my research. So at the time, again, this is a long time ago, but at the time there were 7,000 people being developers in the UK. And I compare that with, for example, Germany. At the time, it was 5,000 people in Germany working with that. In Germany, it was very scattered with very small teams, typically making PC games. But in the UK, you had studios that were bigger, that made AAA games for consoles. That were also independent. They were not owned by, you know, Electronic Arts or Activision or any of those. So that's where I started, you know, because I thought, okay, less bureaucracy since they're independent, but they're big enough to have the pain, you know, like, you know, this is really hard, you know, the whole, you know, team of teams. But, you know, we didn't have any venture capital or anything, so I had, you know, I was eating more noodles then than I ever did as a student. And I remember that I managed to get this like business trip sponsored. I mean, I guess I can say it now, no one's gonna sue me. But it was Invest in UK agency, which basically wants to like foreign investment. So they were very aggressive. I wish Sweden was doing the same, where they would invite entrepreneurs to come on like a little tour and visit these kind of like business parks that had incubators. And of course the whole idea was that, you know, you would come there and set up company there, or at least an office. And I had an intern, so basically I brought that intern. We had to finance our flight tickets ourselves, but hotels were paid for. So basically I had booked meetings with you know, these game studios that I had defined as our ideal customer. And I was just like sneaking away from the tour, you know, taking these meetings and then like catching up by buses and trains, you know, like sneaking back into the tour. And my intern was like doing the actual tour. But it resulted in some deals. So now we had some customers. And then there was one quite large customer we got. The name was Eurocom. I don't think they're around anymore. But the talent from them was definitely around still in the industry. And they were quite big. If I'm not mistaken, I think they were about 200, 220 at the time, which is quite substantial. that was the first like really big deal we made. And I remember we kind of closed the deal at the pub like the day after. I've been doing like the basic like demoing to like all the different teams, and then the head of production, he said, okay, let's meet for lunch the day after. I remember I had Yorkshire pudding because I really like that. And now I do keto, so no Yorkshire pudding for me now, but back then I was eating like everything. And yeah, that's when we closed the deal. We negotiated a little bit of discount and so forth. And also what was very important was that we negotiated that they would give me a quote for a press release. And back then, this is before social media really, so PR was very important.
Of course. And what was the biggest scale you reached with this company? Till what year it existed? And
yeah, so what happened was that that was like the beginning. I did that press release. It was in a magazine. Suddenly I get a call early in the morning from an Australian company. And I get to Australia and we get some deals there. So now we have this weird situation that our whole market is UK and Australia. And then we became big in game development in North America. It was actually Canada first because it's a lot of game developers there. And then we started working more and more with publishers like the EA, Sony. Became really big with them. Japan actually became a very big market for us. So we had a subsidiary there and an office in Tokyo. So I've been to Tokyo like 20 times.
How many employees did you have in your business?
So about 50.
50, okay.
And we also then crossed over because what we didn't realize from day one, but that was that at the same time there was this agile movement, agile project management methods like Scrum and other ones. And what we realized that the tool that we have built was what was really like a big platform is more than just product management. It's really everything like ticket tracking, release management, everything. We realized that we hadn't built a platform for game development. We had actually built a platform for agile software development. And
which can be used not only for developers.
Exactly. Yeah. So we then started to look at other industries. So long story short, we started to become big with other types of companies. So the biggest customer we had with Hansoft was Ericsson. So basically all of the product development at Ericsson around the world were using our product. More than 10,000 users, there's a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I learned so much from that because very often they of course, they bought the platform, but they also really wanted to kind of get the idea and the methodology straight from the horse's mouth. So I was spending a lot of time with them, kind of basically workshopping, like how are you organized today? How would you like to be organized? Like what's the path to that? Because no one was buying our tool to achieve status quo. There was always like a transformational process going on. They wanted to work in a better way. They wanted to work more agile, more lean.
So you didn't attract any investments and you grew organically, right?
We grew organically. We are also profitable. We got even some awards for that in our region. We were the most fast-growing and profitable company.
How long did it take you to become profitable?
I mean, we technically had to be profitable or at least cash flow neutral from day one because we had, no investment.
Okay, yeah.
So that was simply just survival, and we're basically profitable ever since. But then we did have an idea about something bigger to take this into really any type of team. So not just product developers, but also marketing, operations, leadership groups. Mm-hmm. And that was really the seed that became Favro. Mm-hmm. And then we started to talk with investors, and we got some really good investors and angels on board. The lead investor was Crandom, which is one of the absolute most successful venture capital companies in Europe and the world. They did Spotify, Lovable, Klarna, all of those. Okay. They have been amazing to work with.
But you changed the name, or you started another company?
So our original idea was that this will be two products in the same company, mm-hmm. and that's kind of what we fundraised for. But I don't know if you read the book The Innovator's Dilemma, but it's basically about how hard it is to create something entirely new within within a business which is already successful. Mm-hmm. It's easy to change if you're in crisis. It's very hard to change if you're successful. Your organization is going to be like, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
We're doing well, So the whole book is about that, right? And on my own podcast, I interviewed a guy who used to be at Amazon, where the whole thing was, he had just written a book about this and kind of like how to do this within an organization. Slightly different approach than the Innovator's Dilemma, a lot based upon what Amazon is doing right. But anyways, my point here is that I was hit in the face with everything from that book. Unfortunately, I have not read the book. I found the book when I was in the middle of the problem to find solutions. So what happened was that we basically, people often think that Favro was like a spin out from Hansoft. It's actually not the truth. What actually happens was we spun up both companies, and the original company basically became like a holding company. So our investors kind of got, two companies for one, and they started to live their own lives. One being quite a mature business, and one being an absolute startup.
But the partners stayed the same, yeah?
Yeah, the founders were the same, even though we started to put our attention to the new one. And we had basically, people that we have, great talent that we had recruited earlier that become, more and more senior. They were basically now stepping into the main leadership roles at.
How many co-founders did you have in first business?
We were three, and we're still three in Favro.
Okay, and what are responsibilities between you three?
So one of them, he was originally the CTO. And the other one was kind of head of product. But we were overlapping in a little bit unusual ways because I'm quite a technical. This is where we go back to what I originally thought I would do. And the funny thing is that when I talk to my friends who did do the whole engineering program, for the last 20 years, I've been doing more technically deep things. What actually most of them did. Not all of them, but what most of them did. So I've been very involved in product, the whole time. So in another company, I would probably have been, let's say, chief product kind of thing. Versus, my fellow founder who was running the product part, in many ways, he was very heavy on design, but also he was quite involved in the marketing aspect of things, especially in the second company, Favro.
So you were as a CEO, and two of them are product and CTO, kind of.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But anyways, what happened there with Hansoft was that it was quite a mature business, very profitable business, amazing logos. We started to get acquisition offers, for that. When
from who?
Well, what happened in the end, I did actually bring in an iBanker from New York to help us a little bit with structuring the deal and making sure we're also talking to some others. But it ended up with being Perforce that acquired it, financed by Summit Partners. So they were basically doing this kind of buy and build. So kind of private equity financed. They were buying companies. So they acquired Favro or both businesses? No, they acquired Hansoft.
Okay.
Yeah. So because remember, we spun out both. So this was an independent company. So it's not a problem to sell it.
Okay, so first you said that you received two companies for the one price, but it was separated. Okay.
Yeah. No, but I mean, the investors came in first, and then we ran into the trouble with Innovator's Dilemma, and we realized, okay, this is not going to be a good idea doing this as two products in one company.
Sure.
And we spun it out as two companies. Okay, so now we have two independent companies, and then we were selling one of them, which was Hansoft.
Okay, so it was your exit. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And this allowed us to focus on Favro.
Good. How much money did you raise in Favro?
It's slightly, might sound weird to say that it's slightly complicated, but it has a little bit to do like how we funnel some of it. But let's say roughly $9 million we raised for Favro.
Wow. And do you still raising, or you don't need money?
No. I moved on to other things now. So I mean, Favro is around, but we're very. I have now assembled a larger team of founders. I call it a founder collective. It's like a rap collective, but in the founder world.
Interesting.
I really don't like fun fact. I maybe you notice that I purposely are not using the term co-founder.
Yeah. And
the reason is that what I learned is that it gets confusing with. I noticed that some companies, particularly in the US, they treat it hierarchically. That you have someone or that are like founder, and then you have co-founders, and the one who's like founder is like a little bit more, and they actually negotiate a little bit. Like actually, they already started the business, but then people come in and say, okay, you're gonna get a co-founder title. It's just like a whole thing around that. It happens very differently in the US. Versus in Sweden, it's more like, well, when we start a company, and whoever is involved in starting it, then that's the founders. So just to avoid that whole, founder versus co-founder, I'm just like one founder, several founders, and now I'm thinking it further. Now it's like founder collective.
Okay.
So it doesn't mean that everyone has the same share, because there's quite different seniority. So some are more minor on the cap table, and some are more major on the cap table. But it's a founder collective, which is a bit. It's a bigger group. It's about 10 people. So that's something we are starting right now. It's not a complete process yet, and that is really about taking planning, collaboration, and monitoring our work into the AI era. What does this really look like in the age of AI? And I'm seeing a lot of the incumbents in our space doing this in what I think is the wrong way, and it's gonna fulfill a lot of this dystopian scenarios of the management of work, and I think we have a chance here to do something way better. So I'm super excited about this new company.
Wow. Okay. It was a very interesting story about your entrepreneurial journey, but let's now move on to the investment part. When did you start doing your first investments? How did you choose other founders to invest in, and share about this a little bit?
Yeah, so I should say I invested between about 4 years ago and up until last year, because I'm a retired investor now. I name myself retired angel investor because of focus, because I really want to focus on this new company, which is called Planner 8, Planner 8 AI. So what happened was that I after that exit, I put some of that money into creating an investment firm, and that was basically that I wanted to do angel investments not for the money. I wanted to do it for the learnings, because I think it's the best way to learn at rapid speed, and I can tell you more about that in a second. Secondly, I wanted to I wanted to do it for the learnings. I wanted to do it also for just expanding my network, getting to know people that maybe otherwise I wouldn't get to know.
Yeah.
And finally, hoping to build a reputation with the entrepreneurs I invested in of being a good investor to deal with. Being that I have both positive and not so positive experiences with investors myself, and I wanted to in practice be the good one. And the way I think about that is that if you're the one they're calling when things are shit, that's who you want to be. That they don't feel like they have to constantly prove themselves, and that so I think as an angel investor, you need to be quite humble on advice, because they are the ones who know the space. The more valuable advice I think you can give is that you have some battle scars around things that have to do with fundraising, how to deal with investors, conflicts with other founders, conflicts with employees, hiring, firing, making the team work. A lot of these things are more universal. So I think it's very dangerous when you start giving advice on, you should do like this and this and this in terms of product and market and so forth. Of course, you should listen, and you can ask 10 stupid questions. Because one of them is probably not that stupid. It's probably the right question to ask. So you help them think. It's more of like helping them think things through rather than providing an answer. But also
coaching, yeah.
Well, I'm careful with the word coaching, because coaching can very easily mean advice. And for me, it's more facilitating their thinking process. But then you have the things that are, let's say, more emotional. I mean, it's incredibly lonely and hard to be an entrepreneur. True. And just basically providing, let's say, emotional support, I think is incredibly important, because no one else is going to do it.
But this emotional support with money also,
Yeah, of course, which is a hard thing, because you have a vested interest, and there's a power dynamic there. So it's not the easiest thing. But I was really trying to do that well. Just going back a little bit on the learning thing, that when you have someone pitching to you, if it's a good entrepreneur, they really have been thinking about this. They very often they know the market very well. They have really been thinking about the solution to it. So if I have 30 minutes with someone explain to me something which is broken and how to fix it, I'm getting this incredible download. It's like a year of university studies in like 30 minutes. So imagine, you're. I mean, obviously, I've been doing this as a side thing, so I haven't spent too much time on it. But I don't have family and things yet, so I have had some spare time. I need to. I mean, this is basically my favorite hobby. So
in business.
Yeah, I mean, some people have other hobbies. If you get kids, of course, that will take a lot of your time, etc. But since I don't have any of those things, this was my hobby, and you learn incredibly from this.
How many investments?
So I've done 20 direct investments, and I'm a limited partner in 7 venture capital funds.
Wow, it's a lot to get this experience which you wanted.
I don't think it's a lot. I think if you're going to do angel investments, I think you need to do 20. Doing 5 doesn't make any sense. You need to have a decent portfolio for it to have any chance of being plus minus 0 in the end, because a lot of them are not going to work out.
And what was your personal funnel out of these 20 investments? How many of them succeeded?
It's not very glamorous. It's basically network. Hot intros typically. I mean, there's of course a lot of cold reach outs to me, and there's probably some golden nuggets in my LinkedIn inbox that I missed because it was just too many, and I didn't have the time because I was focused on building my main business. So there's probably some golden nuggets, like 3 years ago in my inbox that I missed. So obviously it's easier with a hot intro, and that's a bit of an advice I think for founders. If you're a VC has a process, any institution has a process, but an angel investor has much less process than you think, and it's going to be more serendipitous. I remember when I've been fundraising, so I've been on that side of the table, and I've been bringing in money from angels. I always like to bring in angels, not really for the money, but for their experience, their network. And very often they make decisions very quickly. It's like you do your pitch, and they're like, I like this problem, I like your solution, I like you. Yeah, here's my check. It's normally not that more complicated. Okay,
if we're talking about the results of these 20 investments, how many of them succeed?
I mean, I don't know yet. I mean, investments are. I mean, I stopped investing 2024. Again because of focus and focus, and also I felt like I was done with this iteration of it. I might very well get back to investing in the future sometime because I really like it. But I also formulated some pretty clear business ideas. See, this is the entrepreneur now. And it's like, well, if I'm going to do investing really properly, because remember, I was optimizing for, learning, contacts, and reputation.
Yeah.
If I'm really going to do it for the money, I think I have some pretty good ideas now, how I would do that. That would also involve other people's money, because I have been getting a lot of people contacting me saying hey. That company that you're investing in is so cool. How did you get in so early? Is there a chance I can join you on the next investment? So when you start getting people asking you that, then of course you kind of have the seed for doing something bigger.
And you see this involvement of the other people's money as starting your fund or community or something like that?
No, I mean it would be some kind of fund. I mean, I'm not entirely honest now. I have a pretty clear idea what I would do, but again, as I said, it's not my focus right now. I think the most exciting and important thing I can do right now for the world is this AI, product management company, Planrate. So that is what I want to focus on. There's plenty of investors in the world.
So probably here is the time to talk about this company. Tell us more about it.
I should say something because I do want to answer your question a little bit better.
Okay.
So because you were asking how did it go? I'm starting to see some results. I've seen some that it didn't work out. And what's very interesting is that you have this classic saying. I think I heard it in an interview with Mark Andreessen. He says that most entrepreneurs think they're too late, but in practice they're too early. And I have at least 2 of my portfolio companies that did not work out, actually in the AI space, where that was exactly the case. That if those companies would have been started today, like basically like after ChatGPT's, they would probably have worked out, but they were too early, so it didn't work out. So I've seen that happen already. I also have seen some successes, both some financial success, but then you also have things like I really like computer games. I think it's pretty clear now. So many of them have been that, and there's been some investments there that I've seen. It looks very promising. Game came out really good. Now, just because the game came out really good doesn't mean it's going to be a business success. There's plenty of amazing games that didn't be a big business success. Same thing with movies. Remember, I like movies a lot too.
Yeah.
And people, if I would ask you, hey, do you think that Fight Club is a success? You would probably say, yeah, of course. No, it was not. It was a financial disaster.
Yeah.
But it was an amazing movie. Same thing with, now I lost the name of it, but I take another one from my favorite director, Martin Scorsese, Bringing Out the Dead. One of the few movies where...
While you're thinking, I'm doing this. Sorry.
Yeah, but one of the movies he did where amazing reviews, still seen as an amazing movie, absolute disaster, financially. So you have those, and finally on the movie thing. So the 2 movies then that I've been involved with, a ton of awards. Will it be a business success? I don't know yet. One of them is actually starting to look pretty promising on that front. So yeah, it's. Some things are shaping out, but it's you have to ask me again in like 5 years.
Okay, I will. So let's come back to the company which you're going to focus on next years. Tell us more about like your personal pain, which is solved by this solution, and how did you end up doing this?
So the personal pain, I think, is 2. One, which is very much like, let's say, just myself. But the bigger one is really what I've been seeing with customers over the last 20 years. It's really the same thing, so I can just go on the core of it. If you look at collaboration and planning, if you're doing anything that requires a high level of fast adaptability to change your market, to being able to very, very quickly release an update, your product or your service, it is very beneficial to have a very collaborative approach to how you work with that. You could call it an agile approach or whatever, but collaborative is really the core of it. And there's plenty of good techniques for how to do that. I mean, the most simple form, which was easier pre-COVID when not everyone is more or less remote, that's just to get 5 people in a room. Then this will happen very organically. You're just going to sit in that room. You can be incredibly fast. Just as soon as something comes up, you can kind of work with each other. You need to have some rules around like focus time versus collaboration time, but it's relatively simple when you're all in the same room. It becomes much harder when you are more or less remote, and it also becomes much harder with size when you are in practice team of teams. It's relatively well known how to collaborate better, to how to work, how to plan and work for a high level of collaboration. But the problem is that organizations aren't really doing that. And for the ones of us who are making tools, we're actually making it worse, or I should say the others are making it worse. Because pretty much all tools today are made by people that come very much from kind of like an IT point of view.
Yeah.
So everything, they really think about it as a ticket tracker made into a planning tool. So everything is a ticket. But the problem with this is that basically you're kind of back to Taylorism and really building a machine where everything becomes a little ticket. So you start throwing tickets at each other. I heard people call it, are you a ticket factory? People talk about Jira hell, these kind of things.
Yeah.
And the core issue with this, because a lot of people don't understand, like, well, why is this such a big issue? Well, the big issue is that when you do it that way, you are creating silos, because everything gets siloed. So what you actually want to do instead is actually bring it together. I'll give you an example. Let's say that you are making some kind of creative product. Let's say a game.
Let's say.
And you have an art asset. It can be, let's say, a character in that game, right? Now, that character, that will be an art asset that needs to be developed, and that's the whole science to how you do that. And that's something that obviously will be a part of your product development. So you will touch how the product team is working with that. But very often it might be that you have some external collaborators too. So okay, now you have an external team involved with that, okay? But then you also have the marketing team that also need to use that asset, because that's going to be part of your marketing stuff as well. And then you have some kind of creative direction to this. So there's a little bit of a creative direction. So basically now we are in practice talking about several teams involved. And the way that this normally happens in normal tools like your Jira, your Monday, everything, well, they shop every piece of this process into a ticket. Everything becomes a ticket. So this particular thing becomes like a ton of tickets across everything that needs to happen.
Different dashboards also.
Yeah. It's going to be everywhere. Maybe even different tools.
Yeah.
Probably different tools. So, but it's actually one thing. So if we go back to that metaphor, that how would we do this if we were 5 people in a room, like in this room here now? How would we do it? Well, we wouldn't create like a ticket for you, a ticket for me, and be like throwing it at each other. We would probably have it up on the wall, and we would collaborate on what, how does this look, and we would probably be very fast and most importantly high quality. We would be very aligned around how this comes up. If I take, is this like is it rock style or is it pop style? You don't want it to look like pop style in your marketing, but it looks like rock style in the game. That's disalignment, right?
Yeah.
So you really wanted to kind of bring it together. So this is a pretty major issue. Now, this has been an issue for a while, and unfortunately the world is almost like going backwards now because of remote work. Because there's been a lot of crisis in a lot of industries, which means fear, and with fear people lean to what they know, which means that they go with more traditional product management techniques. So in many ways the world is actually getting a little bit worse now on this, and the only thing that most care about now is really their AI initiatives and cost cutting. AI is very interesting here because AI can both be making this situation way worse, or it can make this situation fantastic. So what I'm afraid of is going to happen now, I'm seeing it happening already, is that when you kind of bolt on AI, which might boost your, let's say, productivity, you can do more in less time. Unfortunately, you're also making this kind of ticket hell situation or this ticket factory situation. You're actually making it worse. And then you need to ask yourself, so if you now have this style of doing it from a tool point of view, which will have a huge impact on your culture and how you actually do things management-wise, if you now supercharge that situation with AI, what's going to happen? Well, you're going to get more ticket hell. And what happens with the human in this? Well, it becomes definitely way more like the cog in a machine, which is opposite from what we wanted. We want people to be highly collaborative. We want people are good at making decisions, people are good at creativity. We're never going to be able to beat AI in productivity.
So how your solution solves this problem?
So the solution then is that what you need, the promise here that someone needs to do if we're going to have a bright future, and what we are doing with Planner 8 is to then design for that, which is 2 things. So what makes Planner 8 unique from any other platform that you have today and you will have with incumbents are basically 2 things. One, that the architecture of basically the planning has a business logic around collaboration. To put it very simple, instead of everything becoming tickets, it basically merges things. So it's more that it's almost like if you make the mistake of take that example I did, and that becomes like 100 tickets, the AI will basically be like, no, this is one ticket. It is one, and we're not going to call it ticket. It's going to be like it's going to be one objective, one card as we would call it, but one card which will be in the workflow for each of these different teams. So all of these teams, they typically have different workflows, and the AI can help them in different ways. But it's actually the same, So you were simulating in our architecture, that whole like we're swarming around the same thing in that room. So that's the architecture of it, which is different. And that's a pretty big thing to build, and you're not going to see companies doing that. The only reason we can do it is because we've been doing this for 20 years. Otherwise, I think it would be hard to build. There's actually an alternative to this, though, which is what Klarna did, which is that you just rip out everything. You get rid of all your tools, and you just put everything in a database, and then you put LLMs on top of that. But that's a very hard and risky approach. So I agree with Sebastian Siemiatkowski, the CEO and one of the founders of Klarna, that most companies will probably not do that. But that is a viable path. It's a risky and hard viable path, but it is a viable path to solve this. But what we're offering is a little bit easier alternative. We're basically offering a product. So you will have that architecture. Okay, that's one. The second thing is that the AI is opinionated. The way I talk about this is that it's the same thing as if you're hiring a leader, if you're hiring a manager. They're going to have different style. Are you hiring someone who's addicted to micromanagement? Or are you hiring someone who has a much more facilitating leadership style? So the AI here is highly opinionated on basically towards collaboration. So that means that the collaboration model, if we think about machine-human collaboration, is really the machine in this case as a team member, which is highly facilitating. I'll give you a very concrete example. People like to talk about dependencies. So in that example I gave you before, with that art asset that's needed both in product and in marketing, etc. That would be a good example. Where is the AI's role in this to facilitate how we handle those dependencies in a collaborative fashion, or is it doing it in a very, say, traditional, kind of like linear Gantt schedule dependencies, kind of fashion? It can go both ways, but this is a very opinionated AI.
And if we make this sound, how would your one-liner of this platform look like?
Well, I'm still working on that. I am better at product than I am at marketing. But my one-liner would probably be something along the lines of that. Planner 8 will take away 90% of the busy work, and it will actually know your organization, and it will facilitate collaboration.
Do you substitute Jira or no?
I mean, the short answer is yes, but then there's a practical aspect of that, which is that for some organizations, switching overnight might be hard. Actually, it's easier to do that than people think. People think, like, oh, we're never going to be able to get out of Jira, but there's plenty of teams that do that. I mean, with Favro and with Hansoft before that, we took a lot of customers from Jira. So it's actually much easier than you think. And one of the reasons why it's easier than you think is because very often your total amount of tickets in Jira, there's normally very few of them that are actually relevant. And the work you're doing are going through cycles. If you're going to manage your Jira right, you need to do a lot of what I would call gardening, and making sure that basically you kind of like archive a lot of stuff and you really only focus on what's important right now. But that also means that when you're entering any, let's say, new cycle of like a new release of your product or whatever, it's a pretty natural place to actually reboot with another tool. And then when you have an integration, like we will have, then that makes it pretty smooth.
Okay, and how many of you are in this company now? How many co-founders?
It's about 10.
10.
Yeah, and
10
there's also some founding investors.
Okay, and the co-founders are the same which you had in Favro?
No, it's 10, so it's more, right?
All 10 are co-founders?
Founders.
Wow.
Founder collective.
Wow, that's huge amount.
But of different sizes. So the three main ones are different. So it's me and the two people I worked with before that have not been founders before. But I'm also going to do something new I haven't done before, where I'm going to be co-CEO. And the person who would be my co-CEO, she's someone I worked with before, so we know we work really well together. And we complement each other very well. She's very, very good at execution, and very good at execution with go-to-market, versus I'm much more strong on product, like vision, product, evangelism. That's my strengths. You
mentioned you have some investors already on board. How much money did you raise?
Well, so we basically have founding investors on board, and we will start a fundraise that will be It's basically a seed round. But kind of like a small seed round, so we'll be $4 million in that round. So I haven't fully started that process yet. I have a few preempt conversations right now with investors I really like. So, if that works out, then I'm just going to go with them and skip the whole fundraising circus. I've done that before and I not super enjoy it. I want to get the product.
And do you have any paid customers so far, or not yet?
We have a wait list, and we have people lining up. I had a very influential person at the game, actually 2 very influential game developers. I'm not going to call out their names, but who was literally texting me over the holidays now, like, okay, when can we get our hands on it? So I basically have a lineup of people that basically want to pay from day one.
Okay.
And the reason I want to do that, I can share what they say, because what both of them have said is that they're like, we really are excited and trust you with this because we know you since before.
Yeah.
You already built 2 products that we really enjoyed using. So the trust level here is pretty high from the beginning, and they was like, how soon can we start paying and using this? So that's why we have this wait list, because of course, as with any product, you want to have a little bit of a calibration period. So we're gonna release like a beta 1, a beta 2. That's only going to be available to the people on the wait list. So we'll start with a few companies and then a few more before we can let this free in the market. It's radically different in its pricing. So basically, if you're a small team, you can use this for free. And the enterprise grade plan is only $395 per user. It is AI native, so you will have access to that AI from day one. But we are very much here. Also, it's going to be like hiring you were asking me about the one-liner. I have a good one. It's like if you're hiring Plannerate, it's like on day one you have hired the best product manager in the whole world. They have read every book and have the right opinions about what's the right things to do. And the good thing is that this one is not going to quit after 9 months, because that's normally what happens with really good product managers, that they're very successful, but then they get promoted, right? Or headhunted. But this one will stay. So that's on day one. And on day 2, he will have learned really well how you work in your organization. So on day 2, you're not only having the best product manager in the whole world employed to manage your stuff, you also have someone who truly understands how you work. So very often when we talk about ways of working as a competitive advantage, it's very often as culture. But now we can actually talk about it as, let's say, technical infrastructure. Of course, culture doesn't go away. But one way to think about this is that this is actually an AI that will be part of your culture.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course. The great idea behind it. Okay, Patric, it's very interesting to hear about your business journey, and you seem to be so energized talking about it, but there is some fuel behind it. Yeah. Where do you take energy for that? And we now are in Bali, and we met 2 years ago first time. So tell me and us more about what is the background of building this business, and what gives you energy. How do you recharge? What do you do? Because it's also interesting. Yeah.
I think my energy comes from curiosity. Curiosity is my driving force. I'm not, I think psychologists have a good term for this, like you're motivated by external factors versus you're motivated more from the inside, and I'm definitely one of those inside kind of persons. And I think curiosity is the key thing. I'm still that child who just absolutely loves
playing.
Sorry?
Playing.
Yeah, playing and building, and I think this is why maybe I'm not the strongest at execution, because execution is a lot about consistency, and I'm much more of a problem solver. So as soon as I've solved a problem, I really want to move on to the next problem. But if I'm humble to understand that success is 90 to 95% execution. So the thing that I'm good at is only 5 to 10% of that, which is the understanding the problem, solving the problem, moving on, or iterating on that problem. But there's a lot of that execution, and that's my weak side. So the energy, it comes from inside. So it's always been like that. But then I guess there's also another aspect to it, which is that I as I told you before, I haven't, I wasn't born, with a lot of, money. I mean, I'm very careful saying I wasn't born with privilege, because being born in Sweden is a lot of privilege just there. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to say that. I was born with a ton of privilege, but I wasn't born with a big account. So my financial success has all been self-made. So suddenly things like eating at like a Michelin star restaurant in Tokyo, eating the best sushi in the world, I had a chance to experience that and a lot of the really nice things that the world has to offer. Meeting incredible people, including like shaking hands with the Swedish king, getting a recognition kind of thing, and all that stuff. So I there's a lot of stuff that I've like done. But what's interesting is that I didn't realize it at the time, but I came to Bali the first time, it's like 3.5-4 years ago now, and I did not go here to find myself or anything. I went here to dive, because I really like diving, scuba diving. And I was going to be here for 2 weeks. I did 1 week of that, and 1 week I wanted to hang out with a friend who used to be a tech CEO in Stockholm, but he kind of like checked out from that whole life and built a life here instead. I did get inspired. I mean, there's a very special energy here, and it definitely affected me, and I started to get into, I've always been doing things like meditation, but I got much deeper into those things, discovered like breath work and stuff like that. As I told you, I was also raised Christian, but I'm also Swedish, which is I think the most secular country in the world, so we don't go to church much. Mm-hmm. And I think I'm a very typical Swede in that. But this is the first time when I would say maybe a bit of spirituality. It might sound a bit cliche, but just really feeling that connection to the universe and everything around us. Experiences around that really coming to me in my meditations and just really feeling that energy. I probably had it before. It's just now it was visual to me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for me, yes, exactly. I'm not sure if everyone can understand it, but people who are in a self-development process definitely can feel it. And when we met with you last time in Slush in Helsinki, we were talking about integration between spiritual and material.
Yeah.
So what is that for you? Because I meet so many people in the business area who are totally not spiritual. Mm-hmm. They're down to earth, and they only do some material thing. Mm-hmm. And there are also some people in Ubud, for example, who are totally not material. They're spiritual. They're flying somewhere. And for me, it is also important to do both somehow. And I see that you're the person who have this in your life, all these sides. So how is it possible for you?
Yeah, well, so first things first. I mean, it was a journey, right? It wasn't like I came to Bali whoop, it changed. It was a journey. So it's been like a four or so years journey of health for both mind and body and spirit. It's almost like a new lease on life. I feel like I've been blessed with starting like an entirely new life, but having the privilege of carrying my experiences from my previous lives, into this. So that's amazing. At, like a middle age to start like in a new life, which is cool. So it's been a journey, and I think it shows. At least people. The only thing that matters is that I feel it, but I also hear it a lot. That people are like, what happened with you? In a good way. Both physically, how I look to the energy that I give out. I think your question is very interesting, and I think it's very deep, because first things first, I think whenever you get into this kind of conversation with someone who is less familiar with this journey, I think it is a fact that you also in Bali have a lot of what I would call performative spirituality, for the Instagram kind of. But you have that here because there's such a strong core of something real. And I think that goes for everything in life, that a lot of things that might have let's say, a bit of a toxic tail, it typically also has some kind of healthy core. So it's not binary, it's like one or the other. And I think I had a conversation about this just the other day, like with a lot of things in life. I think this actually is more important than ever in an age of social media, and especially now in an age of AI, that you need to learn to be very selective, because you can very easily get lost in just the noise.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things, two a little bit deeper things I kind of want to get to here to answer your question. One is when, to me, a spiritual approach has a very strong grounding into how everything's connected. And it doesn't matter so much what kind of model you choose for how you describe that, if you're a believer in one model or another on how things are, if it's spiritual in a more religious sense or another one. It's just that very strong feeling of how things are connected and that things affect each other. That, I think, is a very interesting dimension to how you think about business, and especially now in the age of AI, where with the risk of, at least in some people's ears, sounding crazy, I think we also with AI need to not think about it in a binary like us and them. We really need to see how does this kind of all fit together. But I think it makes sense to already now, even though it hasn't really happened yet, but already now think in terms of AI being sentient, because it's actually very helpful to then, if you think about it as being sentient, even though it might not be yet, what does that mean for how we interact as a system? And what you then realize is that it's not really that much difference from thinking, how am I interacting with, let's say, nature, let's say the trees. I mean, we are in the system together. I can't survive without the trees. We are in a system together. So a very typical spiritual awakening would be that realization, how we're all connected and we're all in one system together. I have a really good analogy with this I like, which is that there are several organisms on Earth that are one-cell organisms, and that we think about an organism. We think about them as an individual, okay? But if we choose a perspective to look at our body is made out of a lot of cells. And these cells are very intelligent, and they all work together in the system. So that means that as a human, we are not a machine. We are a process, a collaboration, being a superorganism. So we are made up of a ton of things working together, and that's what creates the superorganism, a human.
Yeah.
But if you then just zoom out a little bit more, if you're an alien and you come and you look at where we see, I'm not so sure they would think about us as two different individuals. They would probably be like, all right, here's a superorganism of some cells doing things together in this place called Ubud, or this thing called Earth. It's just a matter of perspective, really. Now, might sound very woohoo, but if you now apply that into how you think about AI, how you think about business, it makes a lot of sense. There's not really that much difference. The people in the system, the AI in the system, is not that different from thinking like, me and the trees. And that gives a very interesting perspective. And I think when you get that perspective, that's when you also start ending up in what I think are more healthy and positive ways of how are we going to work together. I don't think I would end up in my conclusions around what it is I want to build with Planner 8 if I didn't have that perspective on like, what does a positive future for how we are all working together look like?
Yeah.
So that's one thing. Okay, and then I also want to share a little bit, let's say, slightly more practical, but still deep thing on this. What you will find, you will find a lot of people, you will find a high concentration of people here that will be highly deterministic, that it's the universe. The universe provides, whatever happens, happens. But I also think that's very often actually an avoidance behavior, as psychologists would say, that you're actually not taking any responsibility. It's just, everything just flows, and it's just, what the universe says. I'm not sure that's entirely helpful, because I'm a believer that the energy goes both ways. We are not just a conclusion, it's just not deterministic, we are also affecting the system.
Of course, yes.
And then on the other hand, And you can get, especially if you are following a lot of entrepreneurs on social media, like guys like Alex Hormozy and things like that. Your social media feed will be flooded with things about like the grind, 996. Feelings are in the way of your execution, kind of stuff. It's like a ton of that thing. And maybe if you go down to like Shango, you'll get all the bros who are more like that. So you have that side of the story too. And what I believe is that, as with everything in life, the hard thing is the balance. That there is a balance. The truth is somewhere in between, and both of these are right. Action becomes before motivation. That's something I would subscribe to. So the hard thing is to know. The hard thing is when you are in that situation, when you need to make the decision. Is the universe here showing me really that there's another path, or is this one of those where no, I need to focus?
It's a hard decision always.
And so that's what it boils down to, your ability to feel that, and that I think takes practice. But what I would say though, as a final thing, is that I think I've probably been further on the, let's say, grind thing before. And what I do find to be very inspiring is that when something isn't going your way or isn't going according to plan, very, very often it leads to something better. And very often it opens a path that you didn't see before. It might be something as simple. I've been having this experience because, as you know, I'm a bit of a time optimist. And I've been doing a lot of talks. And I've been planning to prepare this talk amazingly, and I have this perfect plan on like how I'm going to prepare the talk, what my slides are going to be, etc. I'm just going to need to sit down and get it done, and then something happens, and suddenly it's like, okay, now it's like 2 hours until my talk. Okay, crap, it's not done. What I'm going to do, and very often that situation, I guess it's partly that I'm being forced to find another way. And maybe partly that, it's just the way it happened. I actually find something better. I realize. I'll give you a very concrete example. I had this like very systematic way of explaining something, but to be honest, it would have bored the hell out of everyone. So then I'm like, okay, I need to now find a better way. I need to find a way to say this that I can do in an engaging way, not using 10 slides. Okay. Oh, wait a second, I have this story I can tell, that gives that point. So now suddenly, instead of 10 slides, I'm having one slide, and the slide is an image. And instead of me like very logically going through something, I'm telling a story, and I'll say, okay, and the 3 things I learned from this story is this and this and this. And maybe that is my second slide, And that was way better. I think, everyone definitely liked that talk better, Which is also why I try to not do talks anymore, because I embrace this thing. It's like, okay, I don't think this is the right way to do it. I prefer now instead to do like fire chats and moderating a conversation. I think the thing that really changed in me is that when I have that when I get into that crossroad, when I have that resistance, something is not going to plan. Instead of instinctively being like, oh, damn it, just push. What I do now is that I stop. And I zoom out. I'm like, okay, what does this mean? What are actually my options here now? Maybe there is something here, and then I make the decision. Maybe the decision is to push through, but it could also be like, okay, hold on a second, I'm doing the wrong thing. I actually had that situation yesterday with the recruitment, and I was making the call to a colleague and I said, you know what? I think we're just like we shouldn't do this. We should do this recruitment after the fundraise. We're just splitting our focus. We don't really need this person right now. Why are we working so hard? Because we were like working hard. We're gonna get this amazing talent in Stockholm, and we're working so hard. And now we have wasted all this effort on like the perfect ad. We have been doing some interviews, and I had this conversation with my colleague, and I was like, I think we're being blinded by our effort, and I think we're making the wrong decision here. I think we should wait. And he's like, "Oh, I'm so happy you said that. I've been thinking the same thing."
Yeah, this is very deep, and actual question for me always about following the plan and being able to plan something, and to like ability to let go when the plan is broken. Yeah. And I'm really glad you raised this topic, because I think it's for all entrepreneurs, it's something very actual.
Especially in the age of AI. Because
exactly.
we're not going to beat AI on productivity. So we actually have a chance to lean back a bit and reflect and focus a bit more on, the what, instead of the how.
Yeah. So I'm really grateful for our conversation today, and we actually raised so many topics. I admire many thoughts that you have and how you built your business and your journey. What would be your recommendation to other founders and to other entrepreneurs connected to both to spirituality, to ability to listen to the signs of universe or something like that? What would you recommend to do people who maybe are on the previous stages of their business journey, and what will speed up them significantly?
So the first one is that, well, now's the time. I mean, one of my regrets, this is a classic, you're always going to regret what you didn't, do or try, right? So and this is an amazing time, to build a business. And if you're thinking that you're late to the game with AI, you're not. We are so in the beginning. And also you have to remember that markets change way slower than you think. They might change very fast in certain ways, but basically technology changes faster than humans.
Yeah.
So there's going to be plenty of work to do here in the coming whole generation. So yeah, this is the time. The second thing is quite practical, and that is that the mistake that I have made many times, I think many do, is that you underestimate the size of a very narrow niche. It's much easier to build a business if you're very narrow in who you're serving. And very often, as an entrepreneur, you have a tendency to think like, well, everyone needs this. And then, okay, but I need to be a little bit more narrow.
Yeah.
So then you go narrow. But you are not even close to how narrow you need to be. You can go way narrower. So, you have this like 5 whys technique, like why.
Yes.
You can extend the 5 whys to 10 whys, like, okay, narrower, even narrower. And what you can do, I'm a big fan of Kevin Kelly, one of the founders of Wired magazine, and he has this thing, he said that he calls it like superfans.
So we can start with the second point. Restart with the second point,
yeah.
Right?
So narrow vertical. So when you think that you can't go more narrow in who you're serving, you can go even more narrow. And Kevin Kelly has this thing that what's your 10 superfans, your 100 superfans, and make them like super happy with what you have. So you can do that. And if you're going to have 100 superfans, you definitely have yourself a big market. And then you can start going more. Now, the second thing I would bring up is I think we are now in an age where we really need to think about what it means to be human. So for yourself, I would say this is a great chance to really work on what does it mean to be human, for you, but also bring that into your company. Instead of just grind culture or after works where everyone's just getting drunk, think about like how can we build like a really healthy culture where
Society.
everyone will grow.
Yeah.
I think there's a chance for that.
That's deep. Thank you for your answers, and thank you for your vision. I'm really grateful, and I wish you a huge luck in your next entrepreneurial journey, and I will follow your news.
Thank you.
Oh, we finished. Thank you very much.
Thanks. That's great.